What's up guys, and welcome back to my Bootstrap 5 crash course lesson number 5. And in today's video I'm going to be going over margins and paddings with Bootstrap. So let's actually take a look at what we're going to be doing today. Over here we have a few buttons, and if we go to our VS Code, then we're going to see that we are adding some padding here, and these are going to be classes that we're going to learn in today's lesson. And we're actually going to learn some margin too, so I'm going to paste this code here. And now we can see that we've added some margins to the buttons. And just like before, if you're new here, then go and check out my other lessons on Bootstrap so you won't be behind, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any new videos. And now that we're done with that, let's get right into the video. So let's start by creating an H1 and a paragraph under. In the H1, I'm going to write lorem. Let's do 6 for now. And in the paragraph, we're going to write lorem 15. I'm going to copy it a few times. Let's go back here and see what it looks like. Looks alright. And what we could also do is add some other elements, but this should be good for now. If you need a quick recap on what margins and paddings are, then let's go to our elements here, click on the H1, and what I'm going to do is go to the element style here, and I'm going to add a margin top. And let's see what happens when I write something like, let's do 10 pixels, and hover our H1 here. We're going to see that there's this light orange rectangles here, or lines, and then there's this blue one, which is going to be our H1. And so these light orange backgrounds or lines are actually spaces around our H1. And so this is what padding is. So if we actually change this to margin in general, then we're going to see that we're going to have this kind of like a light orange border, which is going to be the margin. And now let's see what happens when we change the margin to padding. We're going to see that now we're going to have this kind of like light green border, which is going to be pretty close to the margin, but instead of adding space around the element, it adds space inside of the element. So let's change this to something bigger. So let's change this to 50 pixels. And now we're going to see that the H1 is going to be a lot larger because we're adding spaces between our text and the element itself. So if we actually scroll down here, we're going to see that we have the text right here. And the padding is going to be around the text, and then the border is going to be after it. So then this right here would be the margin. So let's actually scroll back up here. Let's add a margin of 10 pixels. And now when we scroll down, we're going to see that this is going to be the margin. We're going to add a border later to see what it's going to look like. And then we have the padding, which is going to be the space around the text. So let's actually just go back here. I'm going to add a border of, let's do 5 pixels solid brown. Let's scroll down here, and now we're going to see that this is going to be the text. This is going to be the padding, so it's going to be space between the border and the text or the content. And then we have the border itself, and then after the border we're going to have the margin, which is going to be space around the element itself. And after this quick recap, I hope you remembered what margins and paddings are, but we're going to go back to our VS Code and we're going to add classes to add margins and paddings to our elements. So let's go to our H1 right here, write class, and then we're going to write M, which stands for margin, and then we're going to add a number from 1 to 5. So if we write 1 right here and go back here, we can see that we added some margin, and if we actually inspect it, then we can see that number 1 is going to add a margin of 0.25 rems. If we go back here, change this to 2, then now it's going to be 0.5 rem, and so on. So let's actually change this to 3 now. Now it's going to be 1 rem, so it's doubled. And then 4, now it should be 1.5 rems, and then the last one, which is 5, and now it's going to be 3 rems, which is going to be the max number that we can use. Because if we go back to our HTML file, change this to 6 or anything over 5, and go back, then I'm going to see that the margin resets and nothing happens. And that's because Bootstrap doesn't have a class for margin 6. But if you really want to have one, then you can add it by yourself. But now, what if you wanted to add margin to only one direction instead of all of them with Bootstrap? So let's go back to our H1 here. And let's say that I wanted to add only a margin of left and set it to, I don't know, 0.5 rems. So something like this, instead of just adding margins to all the directions. Well, what we could do is go back here, and now we're going to have to learn some stuff. So if we want to add a margin top, then we're going to write MT, and then a number from 1 to 5, just like from before. So let's add 2, which is going to be 0.5. And now we're going to see that we have, or that we've added a margin top of 0.5 rems. Same goes for margin bottom. So if we went back here, and we also wanted to add a margin bottom, so we're going to write MB, and then we're going to add 2. And now we're going to have a margin top and margin bottom of 0.5 rems. And we can obviously change this to something like, let's say, margin bottom 5. And we're going to have more margin under our element than over or on top of our element. And if we actually try to add a, let's say, margin left of, let's do 5, 2, then we're going to see that it doesn't work. And that's because for margin right and left, they have different key letters. So if we go back here, we can see that M is going to be margin, T is going to be top. Same thing here. So M is going to be margin, B is going to be bottom. But then for margin left, what we'd have to write is MS. And now we're going to see that the margin left has been added. And for right, it's going to be different. So for right, it's going to be ME. Let's add a margin of, let's do 3. And now if we scroll down here, we're going to see that ME is going to be margin right. So we're going to have to memorize these key letters for margin right and margin left. And the reason that we don't see the margin right here is because we don't have any other elements to the right of our H1. And now let's go back here, and let's say they wanted to add 2 margins, which are going to be the same. So margin top and margin bottom. Let's say they want it to be 3. And instead of creating 2 classes just for 2 properties or 2 property values, what we could do is change this to something like my. So y is going to be the y-axis, and then let's change this to 3. And now if we go back here, we're going to see that my is going to change the margin top and margin bottom to 1 rem. So the same goes for the ms and me, so margin right, margin left. This one's going to be mx. So the x-axis, we're adding a, let's do 4. So we are adding a margin of 4 to the x-axis. So that's going to be margin right and margin left. And over here, we're going to see that we're adding right and left. And so everything has downsides. So if we went back here, and let's say that we wanted our margin left to be 3, and then the margin right to be 5, then we would have to write this instead of writing something like this, because we can't do something like, let's say, the, I don't know, margin left is going to be 4, and then the margin right is going to be 5. That's because Bootstrap doesn't have this, so what we have to do is create 2 classes instead of 1. And the margin classes work on any element if you're doing it right, so let's just delete all of this. Let's create some buttons, so I'm gonna go here, we can write btn. I'm gonna write some text, so just write button here. I'm gonna copy this a few times, so we can do 4. We can change this to button primary. Copy this, paste it here, success, danger, and then dark. And now we've created 4 buttons, or to this point, and I'm going to delete all of our margins here, and I'm going to go over padding. The way that padding and margin works are very similar, so their classes are similar too. And so if we want to add margin top, then we would write MT, that would be margin top, and same goes for padding. So if we wanted to add padding top, then we would just write PT and then the amount. So if we wanted to add just padding, then we would just write P and then a number. So let's just write 4. And I'm actually going to copy this, or actually, no, I'm going to delete this and paste it inside of our first button. So we're going to write P4. And when we take a look here, we can see that we added some padding in our button. And if we click it, then, or sorry, if we inspect it, scroll down here, then we can see that we have padding of 24. And if we want the button to actually look like a button, then what we would do is go back here. And just like with the margins, what we could do is write px, which will add padding to the right and left. And we can set this to 5. And same goes for the y, so we could write py. And let's set this to 2. And now we're going to see that this actually looks like a button now. And if you want to, you can obviously do something like padding top. We could set this to 5, padding bottom 2, and let's do the padding left. Let's set this one to, let's do 5, 2, and then the padding right, I'm going to set this to 4. And now we're going to see that this button looks really weird, and that's because this has to be padding, not ME. This is my bad. I'm sorry about that. There we go. So now it's going to look kind of messed up. So don't really do this, but I'm just showing you that you can add padding tops, bottoms, and so on, just like with the margins. So let's kind of play around a bit. So I'm going to delete all of this. And let's start by adding a padding X. Let's set this to 5. Let's do padding Y. Set this to 4 maybe. Actually, let's do 3. Go to this button. Let's do padding X. Set this to 4. Padding Y. Set this to 2. This one's going to be 3, 1. And let's actually change this to 4, 3, 2. So we can do one more time. So PX, 2, and then PY, 1. And now we've created this kind of like ladder with padding classes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, then leave a like, sub to the channel for more content like this, leave a comment down below if you have any video requests, and see you in the next video.